This video is intended for users who are already familiar with UFIs and the creation of PCN notifications. Various videos on the basics of this topic are available on YouTube within the DR software channel. Building of groups is basically intended to reduce the number of PCN notifications, but it can also have exactly the opposite effect. In addition, one should consider that the workload for the user will increase significantly in most cases. Always keep in mind, if you use the automatism of ChemGes, almost no effort is needed to fulfill your obligations regarding the PCN notification. Without exception, manual intervention is always necessary for building groups, and even though ChemGes offers maximum assistance for this, it is still necessary that you first define the groups and then assign them to the individual substances. The most basic group are the MiMs. MiM is the abbreviation for mixtures in mixtures. You cannot produce MiMs by yourself. MiMs are always supplied from outside your organization. Ideally, MiMs should already have an UFI, and should already have been reported to ECHA by your supplier. If that is not the case, a PCN notification is possible without an UFI but with complete supplier data. Supplier data, such as name, address, telephone number and email address are not necessary when an UFI is present, and, if you do enter them, are for your own information only. Even if you do not have to provide the full formulation for a MiM, as you only have the data from your supplier's safety datasheet, you are still obliged to list all ingredients from this SDS. It is not permitted to omit ingredients. To define a MiM, enter either the UFI of the supplier in the field for the UFI, or, if the UFI is not known, a hyphen. The supplier's company must be selected only if the UFI is not known. If the supplier's UFI has been reported to ECHA, then ECHA can identify the supplier from the UFI. If you wish, you can also specify the countries for which the supplier has made the PCN notification. However, this is for your information only. ECHA will send a warning if the supplier has notified fewer countries than you, but it will accept the PCN notification anyway. If the supplier's formulation is known, then it is certainly easier not to define a MiM, as there is enough information available for the regular PCN notification. There is no advantage in defining MiMs and it only results in extra work for you. But of course this is up to you. Non-hazardous perfumes and colorants can be grouped together for reporting. However, non-hazardous also means that as soon as even one of these particular ingredients becomes hazardous and is still included in the formulation, the other non-hazardous ingredients may also no longer be combined. It is also not permitted to report the maximum value and the remaining substances separately. So if you have 6% of non-hazardous perfumes in the formulation, all perfumes have to be reported individually. This can have the effect that when the hazard information for a perfume or a colorant is altered, all your formulations containing this ingredient will receive a new UFI. It is also rather inconvenient that for the total only the ranges are permitted that have been specified by ECHA. This means that if you have for example 5% colorants in the formulation and increase this value to 9%, you need a new UFI. Even if these values are quite realistic, it is not permitted to indicate for example a value of 3 to 15% in the notification. To define a raw material as a perfume or colorant, go in the maintenance of raw materials to substance groups and then activate one of the corresponding options. Since preparations, particularly intermediates, can also be perfumes or colorants, the corresponding options in the country-specific classifications screen must be activated. In addition, these formulations must be set as MiMs. ChemGes automatically summarizes all this information in the formulation, so you don't have any extra work with that. In this example, only the first line would need to be reported to ECHA. ICG is the abbreviation for interchangeable component group and means that individual substances that have the same properties and serve the same purpose can be grouped. This gives you the advantage of being able to change the quantities within the ICG for individual substances at any time without getting a new UFI and thus triggering a new PCN notification. The principle works similarly to the grouping of perfumes and colorants, with the difference that groups can also be formed for hazardous substances. ICGs are only an advantage if existing formulations are frequently changed and one wants to avoid having to report these preparations again and again. However, this also means that it is not necessary to create ICGs for formulations that are hardly ever changed. Attention! If there are already reported UFIs for your products, then the introduction of ICGs could lead to the automatic creation of hundreds of new UFIs, since logically the formulations for these preparations would be different. To avoid this, the ICGs are only reported as soon as there would be a real modification within a formulation. If the hazard of an ingredient of a group changes, this can become more problematic, because then all preparations with these ICGs receive new UFIs. Here is an example to illustrate this. We have 4 ingredients that belong to the same substance group. 2 of them have no hazards and 2 do have hazards. Thus, 2 ICGs are formed. One without hazards at 30% and one with hazards at 70%. If, based on new information, one of the ingredients would become hazardous, then it must be assigned to the other group. The ICG with the non-hazardous substances now only has 10% of the ingredients, and the ICG with the hazardous substances will have 90% of them. This therefore means that although the substances belong to the same substance group, a new UFI must be calculated. To initiate the automatic grouping of similar substances, substance groups must be assigned to the individual raw materials. Creating a new substance group is quite simple. To do so, click in any raw material on substance groups, then on maintenance substance groups and then on new. Enter a description and activate that the substance group is to be used for ICGs in the PCN notification. If you now click on the substance group allocation for this substance, you can select the substance groups intended for ICGs. As you can see, there are already some predefined substance groups which are intended to be used for standard formulations. The explanation on how to use standard formulations follows in the next section of this video. The word usable in the ICG column simply means that the substance group can be assigned to the substance for the purpose of creating ICGs. MiMs can also be used for the creation of ICGs. Therefore, substance groups can be assigned to them as well. We have pre-prepared a test recipe with 5 ingredients. All of these 5 ingredients belong to the same substance group. 2 of them have hazards and 3 are not hazardous. One of the ingredients has been entered at 0%. As you can see, all ICGs including the ICG with the MiM have been formed correctly. Even though all raw materials belong to the same substance group, the ICGs have been split depending on the hazard properties. In order to address particular difficulties by the gypsum, ready-mixed concrete and cement sectors and to allow compliance without reducing the level of safety, it is possible that information related to emergency health response, which relates to specific standardized mixtures in those 3 sectors, is submitted by reference to a standard composition. This option should only be used if the classification of the mixture does not change depending on the composition of the mixture within the concentration ranges specified in the standard formula. Furthermore, the preparers of PCN dossiers have difficulties with certain fuels in view of the fact that the fuels placed on the market usually comply with a technical standard, but the composition itself is variable. To make such an assignment, click onto the PCN ingredient list button. As you can see, the program immediately suggests the most suitable standard formula, if that is possible. On the right side you see the button, Selection of Standard Formula. A number in brackets next to it indicates how many different standard formulations could automatically be determined from the ingredients of this recipe. In the overview you will then see all possible assignments provided by ECHA. The most suitable assignment is shown in blue, the other possible assignments are shown in green, and the assignments that could not be determined automatically are shown in black. Select one of these assignments. The formulation to be reported is then immediately rebuilt. A check for correctness is not carried out. This is not a weakness of the program, but is done intentionally so that you are not restricted when using this option. You can also make the assignment without going to this formula breakdown beforehand. To do this, simply click in the standard formula field. A similar overview as before will then appear and you can make your choice. We have pre-prepared a typical preparation in which the previously selected standard formula and a second standard formula are present. The preparation contains also a MiM and 2 automatically formed ICGs. You can see clearly that the program automatically uses the percentage ranges specified by ECHA as the percentage ranges which have to be reported. If your standard formula does not completely correspond to the predefined formula from ECHA, then, if the raw material is available in the standard formula, the limits are adjusted according to your real formula. However, if the equivalent for your raw material could not be determined at all, then the predefined standard percentage ranges are used. For standard formulations, the percentage ranges of the ingredients have to be submitted to ECHA. If these percentage ranges should later change in a dossier, then one gets a warning back from ECHA, but the dossier is accepted anyway. A special situation is caused by standard formulations in which individual ingredients have not been identified by EC numbers. For this type of raw materials one has to assign substance groups. These special substance groups are already predefined. The input is identical to that described for the ICGs and is also possible for MiMs. You are not required to assign these substance groups to the raw materials, but if they are available, it will allow the program to make better suggestions for the assignment of standard formulations and also a more correct determination of the percentage ranges to be submitted to ECHA. As you can see, you have quite a few options for grouping raw materials. You can use these options, but you don't have to. If you do use these options, then it will mean extra work for you, but the number of new UFIs generated will probably be reduced. On the other hand, if you don't make too many alterations in your recipes, then the effort will probably be disproportionate to the resulting benefits.